Hi guys, Olive here. Here today to do part one of what will become a two-part book haul. I've acquired quite a few books over the past few months, especially since the holidays just recently concluded. I split the haul up into two sections, fiction and nonfiction, since I do read pretty equally from both of those categories. And I put a poll out for all of you to help me decide which one I should post first. Did you want to see the nonfiction books first? Do you want to see the fiction books first? And you all told me nonfiction, which I was very pleasantly surprised by. So in today's video, I'm going to show you all of the nonfiction books that I have acquired recently. By my count, I have 26 nonfiction books to show you in today's video. So obviously time is of the essence. So let's hop right in. The first book I would like to show you is The Ghost Hunters, William James and the Search for Scientific Proof of Life After Death by Deborah Bloom. This is by the author of The Poisoner's Handbook, which happens to be one of my very favorite nonfiction books of all time. I don't know why it's never occurred to me to pick up any of her other nonfiction books, but I am attempting to rectify that oversight with this purchase. This book is about William James, who was a philosopher and a professor of psychiatry at Harvard, who out of the blue at the end of the 19th century decided that he believed in ghosts and launched a study to try to prove their existence. This seems like a great piece of nonfiction to read around Halloween. Get those spooky vibes. The next nonfiction book I have to show you is another work of history that is called Romantic Outlaws, The Extraordinary Lives of Mary Wollstonecraft and Mary Shelley by Charlotte Gordon. I know Natalie from the channel Curious Reader called this book one of her favorite books of 2018. She has a fantastic channel that you must be watching if you like my taste in nonfiction. I really trust her taste, so I thought I would pick this up. This is a book about a remarkable pair of women who just so happen to be a mother-daughter pair. Writer and women's rights advocate Mary Wollstonecraft died less than 2 weeks after giving birth to her second daughter, a girl who would grow up to marry the famous romantic poet Percy Bysshe Shelley and go on to write the classic Frankenstein. A book about another classic, albeit a very different one, is I'll Be There For You, the one about friends by Kelsey Miller. It is nearly impossible to read this title without wanting to sing it. This is a deep dive into the history and enduring legacy of the classic 90s TV show Friends. I read another book that was not dissimilar to this one, although it was all about Seinfeld, called Seinfeldia. I read that a couple summers ago and I thought it was so much fun, and I hope this one is as well. The next book I picked up is about a world that seems like a TV show but is actually real. That is called Nothing is True and Everything is Possible, The Surreal Heart of the New Russia by Peter Pomerantsev. This appears to be a book that displays all of Russia's complexity by describing all the wild things that have come to make up the modern Russian reality. From what I've read about this book, it seems that it displays some of the oddities that can be found in the new Russia, and that it is not recommended for those going in with a beginner's level of knowledge about Russia, seeking a greater understanding about just Russia in general. Since I am not going in with a beginner's knowledge, I am actually really curious as to what I'm going to make of this. Speaking of a novel experience, I also picked up Hammerhead, The Making of a Carpenter by Nina McLaughlin. This was one off of my 5-star nonfiction predictions list. It is about a woman who quit her office day job to become an apprentice to a carpenter, even though she had never swung a hammer before. This is all about her experience and what she learned from it. I obviously think it's going to be great. One book that comes very close to home is Extra Virginity, The Sublime and Scandalous World of Olive Oil by Tom Mueller. It's a book all about the oil of my namesake. It covers the vast history of the substance as food, as medicine, as a beauty aid, as a vital element in religious rituals. It then brings us to the modern day to show us the struggle between the globalized food industry and small artisanal producers. While I, ironically enough, don't like olives, I do really like olive oil and use it on a regular basis. So I'm very intrigued by this. Another book about food is The Ghost Orchard, The Hidden History of the Apple in North America by Helen Humphreys. This is obviously a book all about the apple, a fruit that first evolved in Asia and then crossed the Atlantic to come to North America in the custody of a Quaker woman, only to then go on to have influence on Johnny Appleseed, Robert Frost, and of course our famous pies. I also picked up Wonderland, How Play Made the Modern World by Stephen Johnson. This is about luxuries and amusements and the impacts that they've had on human history. How shopping spurred economic growth, how games inspired strategy, and so on and so forth. It seems like an interesting mix of play and also societal history. Up next, I have Automate This, How Algorithms Took Over Our Markets, Our Jobs, and the World by Christopher Steiner. This has one of my pet peeves in the subtitle. I hate when nonfiction books say that something changed the world, but I will forgive this one because algorithms really have had a big impact on our modern world. Since we all here on YouTube are affected by its algorithm, which to put it simply is just a set of rules that a computer follows, I thought it would be good to learn more about them and the roles they play. And on that same topic of things impacting the world, I also picked up The Human Age, The World Shaped by Us by Diane Ackerman. Pretty much every nonfiction book that Diane Ackerman has written seems absolutely fantastic and like something I would love. I really need to get to one of her books this year. This one is all about the human relationship with nature, our place within it, and all the different ways in which we meddle with it. And in the same breath, I would also like to show off Silent Spring by Rachel Carson, which is also definitely about the impact that humans have on nature. This is the first nonfiction book I've ever put on my classics TBR. I put it on there so that I can have a great classic piece of nonfiction to read during Nonfiction November. This was published in 1962 and was instrumental in bringing the public's attention to the dangers of pesticide use. I've read passages from this book and I've read a lot about the impact that it had since I took quite a few different ecology courses during my school-aged years in high school and in college, but I've never read the book as a whole, and I'm excited to finally be able to do that. And I also thought I would pick up a book that I can read alongside Silent Spring in November called On a Farther Shore, The Life and Legacy of Rachel Carson by William Souter. I have talked a lot in recent months about how I enjoy reading a biography of an author or something about that author and their work alongside the work itself, so I'm going to be doing that again in November. Another nature book I picked up is Rain, 4 Walks in English Weather by Melissa Harrison. This is by nature writer and novelist Melissa Harrison. I actually read and reviewed her latest novel, All Among the Barley, toward the end of 2018. And in that novel, I was really impressed by the way that she described nature, so I'm really looking forward to reading this examination of how rain is embedded in English identity. I am sure that I will find it relatable because it has been raining here in Pittsburgh for what feels like years. It's how I keep this lovely pasty complexion because it is always gray outside. I also picked up Improbable Destinies, Fate, Chance, and the Future of Evolution by Jonathan B. Losos. This is a book about evolution, but more specifically about those tiny mutations or those very unlikely occurrences that have had major impacts on the way life looks today. It's really crazy to think that things that are so ubiquitous today may have been the result of an evolutionary fluke. I'm really curious about this. Another book covering evolution is Aqua Genesis, The Origins and Evolution of Life in the Sea by Richard Ellis. This is a highly scientific exploration of life in the sea written by a marine biology expert. I believe he discusses both living and extinct organisms and their evolutionary adaptations. I also picked up Waiting for Aphrodite, Journeys into the Time Before Bones by Sue Hubble. This is a book all about invertebrates of both land and sea, but mixed throughout, I've heard that Sue Hubble mixes in her own life philosophies, mainly about conservation and the value of nature, which a book on science and nature plus life lessons is exactly my kind of thing. And the last book on the ocean that I picked up is called The Reef, A Passionate History by Ian McCalman. This is a history of the 1,400-mile-long Great Barrier Reef, which is located just off the coast of Australia and is visible from space. It's the world's most complex ocean ecosystem. It has a colorful history, but it is unfortunately, yet unsurprisingly, under threat from human actions. Another book I picked up is The Secret Life of Cows by Rosamund Young. This was another one off of my 5-star nonfiction predictions list. I've been attempting to acquire all the books on that list that I did not previously own because, well, I think I'm going to love them. As I said in that video, this is a book all about cows and how they are so much more complex than people realize or want to realize. Another book on complex animals is Monster of God, the Man-Eating Predator in the Jungles of History and the Mind by David Quammen. Lions, tigers, and bears, oh my. This is a book all about man's relationship with 4 different types of animals who could easily make a meal out of us. And by relationship, I don't just mean when we come face to face with these impressive creatures, but also the impact that the risk of being prey has played on our collective human psychology. By far, the most extreme natural history book that I've picked up in the recent months is Venom Doc by Brian Greig Fry. This is venomologist Brian Fry's memoir of collecting venom to study, and his body has certainly paid the price. He's been stung and bitten by multiple different species, many different times. He has needed stitches, he has broken bones, including his back. It sounds bonkers. Another book that looks like it has the potential to be violent is Animal Weapons, The Evolution of Battle by Douglas J. Emlyn. This book not only looks at the impressive defense mechanisms that various species have evolved in order to protect themselves, but it also draws parallels to our own forms of weaponry, which I think is a very intriguing concept. And speaking of being under threat from animals, I also picked up Look Big and Other Tips for Surviving Animal Encounters of All Kinds by Rachel Levin. I first saw this book on one of Steve Donahue's many mail hauls that he does. I thought it was way too cute to pass up. It is a little field guide inspired book of how to deal with all different types of animals, from fruit flies to grizzlies and everything in between. But something entirely more tame is The Sound of a Wild Snail Eating by Elizabeth Tova Bailey. This is a mixture of memoir and nature writing, which is so my kind of combination. But the author of this book at one point was bedridden with some kind of an illness, and during that period in her life, a tiny wild snail took up residence on her nightstand. These are her observations of this tiny creature and what it taught her about her place in the world and what it means to be alive. It sounds gorgeous. Another memoir nature writing combo that I recently picked up is called The Otters Tale by Simon Cooper. I picked this one up when I was out book shopping with Sabrina from Steakachino and Katie from Effusions of Wit. The author of this book ended up sharing an abandoned mill that he had recently purchased with a family of wild otters who decided to move right in. This book tells the story of the relationship that he developed with these otters, which sounds so lovely. And of course, this would not be one of my nonfiction hauls if there weren't at least one book on birds. In this haul, there are 2. The first one is That Quail Roberts. This is by Margaret Stanger, and this book was a recommendation from one of you lovely viewers. Someone left me a comment after I read and loved Owl by William Service. They thought I would enjoy this book because it does have a similar story, but in this case, a baby quail is raised from an abandoned egg by a family. I'm actually really familiar with quail. My grandfather used to raise them to eventually hunt them, unfortunately. But I've interacted with quail a lot during my life, including a very funny story of me when I was 2 years old getting frustrated with a baby quail because it wouldn't wake up because it had unfortunately died. So there you go, a little bit of a morbid story for you to brighten your day. But this book, on the other hand, sounds heartwarming and just as lovely as Owl was. And to close out this nonfiction haul, I would also like to show you The Rarest Bird in the World by Vernon R.L. Head. This is the story of an expedition to Ethiopia in 2012 to find a bird so rare that it hadn't even been identified yet. The team only knew of this bird's existence because a group of scientists in 1990 had unknowingly collected a wing of this bird, but then when they returned and studied it in the lab, they discovered that it belonged to no other known bird species. Of course, I was interested in this book because it is a bird book, but also because it has a little bit of adventure and mystery thrown in there as well. So those were all of the nonfiction books that I've picked up in recent months. I would love to hear from you in the comment section below. Have you read any of these books? Have you heard of them? Are you now interested in reading them after hearing me talk about them? Or if you have any other general comments or questions, those can also go in the comment section below. But if you would prefer to chat with me somewhere other than YouTube, I am on a variety of different places on social media, and the links to all of my profiles are linked in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I will see you in part 2 of this book haul to show you all of the fiction books that I have acquired. Bye.